take me far away under sycamore trees.
Welcome to Twin Peaks Unwrapped. I'm your host, Ben Durant, and beside me is
Bryon Kazaska, and today we have our guest. We have Cameron Cloutier from Obnoxious and Anonymous, his YouTube channel, with his film Queen of Hearts, a Twin Peaks fan film. Cameron, it's been a long time coming. How is it going?
It's nice to be done with the film.
Are you really ever done with anything? I mean, like,
well, you know what, to be honest, that might be correct, because my wife and I took a sort of hike near an area where I shot one of the sequences, and I realized that I didn't credit that location in the special thanks. So I went back like that night and added it in. So there's like one extra credit that needs to be put back into the film.
That's great.
But I told myself it's not a person, and it's not a piece of music. So I think I can get away with it. So
Right.
Well, this is like an epic 4-hour Twin Peaks fan film. I mean, it is something else. I remember thinking like, oh, I'll wait for, it all to be put together. And Cameron, you and I were messaging back and forth. It's like, it's 4 hours. Like, whoa, why didn't I was like thinking, it's a feature film. I mean, I've done some like just a little bit of feature film stuff that were like for college and stuff. It's like, oh, it's gonna be an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. It's like, no, this is 4 hours. I mean, that is a lot of work to put into that.
It wasn't meant to be. I'll be honest with you. Because the script is, I believe the script's 98 pages. And so I thought, okay, it's going to be roughly around maybe like a Fire Walk With Me length.
Yeah.
And then of course you add in those Twin Peaks pauses, right? And that's going to carry it over. Also, we had 150 scenes in the script. Now, obviously not all of them were filmed because of the pandemic, but obviously a good chunk of them were. So if you take 150 scenes, and even if every scene is 2 minutes, that's going to be a 5-hour film. Right. The fact that we got it down to about 3:45 with credits, that takes it to 4, because I obviously thanked everybody who donated to the project. It's kind of the El Mariachi of Twin Peaks films, because it's pretty fast in terms of like the speed of the scenes. I don't have, there are pauses, but it's not Gordon and Albert looking at each other for 5 minutes straight in a hotel room.
So how long have you been thinking about making this film? I love like the history of how this came about.
Like everybody, of our age, saw Fire Walk With Me in the theater. I was a huge fan, obviously, of the series. Couldn't wait to see Fire Walk With Me. Saw it in the theater, and I really enjoyed it. As I said to John Thorne the other day, I had a few sticklers, and because I was, I'm kind of a continuity person, but I really enjoyed the film overall, and I think I really love it now that the missing pieces are out, and especially if you can see the full fan cut right now. Like that to me is like that is what David Lynch intended the film to be, but he couldn't do it because of the theatrical runtime. But anyway, so I saw, of course, the scene of Annie giving Laura the message. And I thought that is really a bold choice, because if you look at her character in the series, and she's this former nun, suicidal ex-nun, right? It's like, how bad does the world have to be with Mr. C out there, or I consider the doppelganger at that time? How bad is it going to be out there in the world for her to have to go back in time? Some people equate it as a dream sequence. I kind of look at it as her going back in time in some way to give Laura this message. I thought, wow, it's got to be really bad out there, for somebody who is going to defy time and space, who, believes in God and the universe and all that. And then the ending of Fire Walk With Me with Laura and Cooper in the Red Room, and thinking how bittersweet that they're trapped in this horrible place, but they're safer in there than they are out in the world. Right. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool? So a few months later, I'm sitting with some friends, and they said, if you ever got into a room with Mark Frost and David Lynch, now keep in mind at this point, they were still doing On the Air together and all that. Right. So the assumption was that they were going to continue being partners. What would you pitch to them? And I had never really thought about it. And then it kind of reminded me of that moment in Fire Walk with Me. And I thought, it'd be really great to tell the story of Annie Blackburn post season 2, how she got to Laura, but also cross that with Windom and Caroline, because obviously in the second season finale, there's this, with Cooper in the Black Lodge, there's Annie and Caroline are interchangeable. Right. And Annie was kind of set up to be sort of the redemption arc for the Caroline thing anyway. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to kind of take a sort of a Godfather 2 approach and tell both stories where, Annie's going to get to Laura, Cooper and Caroline Windom are all that tragedy, but it's going to culminate in both women in the Black Lodge looking at each other wearing the same dress. Right. And I thought that would be kind of a cool thing. And that is where it stopped. Right. I thought I kind of just made a mental note, like, that'd be really cool. Never thought in a million years I would do it. Never even pursued to doing it. Never wrote the script, anything. So we get to season 3 and I'm like very excited because I'm thinking they're gonna deal with Annie in some way. They have to.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, even
We all
Lynch.
thought that. Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, David Lynch, even in the book Lynch on Lynch, he mentions Annie visiting Laura. He mentions the fact that it would be like, I think he said something like if someone in the 20s mentioned Lee Harvey Oswald or something like that. So I knew that was on his mind. So I thought, okay, we're gonna deal with this in some way, some form. And we kind of got that scene with Hawk and Truman, and where Hawk doesn't even remember how many diary pages there are because he's completely off on his count. But and then of course, the yellow pages that Laura obviously had to write Annie's thing on that because she already gave her diary to Harold Smith, so they couldn't be included, right?
Right.
So I kept thinking, okay, Heather Graham is going to be one of those people that it was not on the cast list that is going to show up.
Yep.
And then she didn't show up. So I started thinking, okay, well, because I think soon after season 3 ended, Thor Omley came out with the Summer House at Pearl Lakes.
Yeah,
right?
really good.
And it was like, I think it was like a 5-minute, the first one was like a 5-minute short. I think it was roughly around that. And a friend of mine said, you should check this out. And I was like, I didn't know Thor, and I still don't, but I mean, I didn't know of him, and I didn't know the film. I knew someone told me it had won at like the Twin Peaks Fest, I think up in Washington when the fest was there. And so I looked at it and I was like, yeah, this is something you can do now because obviously technology is cheaper and doesn't look like, I mean, no offense to Inland Empire, it doesn't look like that anymore, right? I mean, you can kind of get HD. And so I thought, okay, well, that would be an idea. And so I started floating around the idea on my channel because I was, like you said, I was doing daily, if not weekly videos because we were still coming down off that season 3 high, still trying to figure out what the heck some of it meant, right? If anything, even if it just, what did it mean to us personally, if not what it actually means? And I thought, anyway, so I started floating this idea, like, should I do this? Wouldn't it be, I thought this is going to be a little bit more expensive than what Thor did. And
Cameron, do you have a video production background? For some reason I thought you did. Do you?
I've done films. I went to film school for a little bit, but I also worked in news.
Okay.
So, and obviously that's a completely different thing, right?
Yeah.
But you did learn how to shoot fast and edit fast, right?
Right.
You got to make that 6 o'clock deadline.
Yeah.
Anyway, so so people kept encouraging me, like, you should really do this. And I thought, okay. And then I got wind that the final dossier was coming out and there was going to be a subject on Annie Blackburn. And I thought, okay, well, this is where this movie idea stops, because I know a lot of people out there would say, well, it's your story, do what you want. Yeah, but I'm a stickler for this kind of stuff. I am not going to do something that is going to trample on what Lynch or Frost, even individually, are doing. So if Frost had written something, I don't know, about Annie that completely I couldn't do anything with, this movie would not exist. So anyway, the final dossier is coming out and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is where it's going to stop. And it comes out and it talks about how Annie is in the hospital and she's in there for one day and she's talkative and then she goes completely silent. And I was like, well, I kind of need her to get out of the hospital. That's kind of, but Frost says she stays in the hospital. And then it dawned on me, yeah, but if I can move all the speaking scenes to one day, so like her talking to Major Briggs, her talking to Norma, her talking to the doppelganger, instead of being spread out, because originally my story was going to be she got out of the hospital and was staying with the doppelganger in the hotel room, and then realized that this wasn't Dale Cooper and she had to get out of there. But season 3 had set up this timeline where pretty much the day after Cooper came out, or the doppelganger came out of the lodge, that he confronted Major Briggs and left town. So I knew I had to have that timeline. And then I thought, okay, well, if she's talking for one day, great. Then that fits that timeline. It fits everything. But she's in the hospital forever, like kind of just quiet. And I thought, you know what? We're going to tulpa her. And that's what I did. And so that way it fits in with the final dossier, but then I'm still able to tell my story. And I think I was constantly showing pictures while I was editing the film of Annie in the hospital. And people are saying, how are you going to have a protagonist where she's just comatose in the hospital? Yep. And then once they saw the film and saw what I did, they realized, you bastard, I can't believe you. But it just made perfect sense, right? That you could just do that, especially since she was kind of in a terrible state after confronting the doppelganger. I thought, well, that's where the tulpa is going to be, comatose and frightened. So anyway, so I didn't think anything of it. And then again, the final dossier came out. I figured I could do this. So I started doing the campaign. And well, first thing I want to say, because there's been some misconceptions out there, but is that the first person I even reached out to prior to even doing the campaign and was Sabrina Sarlin. Now, and the reason why I even bring it up is because I didn't know if they were going to do a season 4 or something. I didn't, so I wanted to kind of bring it up. I mean, she'd been on my show a couple times, and I wanted to say, this is what I'm thinking of doing. If there is any issue with this, let me know, and I won't even do it, because I said, we have so many mutuals on, social media.
Right.
You're going to see something having to do with the film. This is my intent for it. This is what I'd like to do with it. And, she basically wrote back and said, thank you for telling me. I can't wait to see this. Good luck with it. And so I thought, okay, without actually saying, you have permission from Lynch Production, because that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
It was like, you know what? I'm going to look this way and good luck. and so when I would hear stories out there while we're trying to get the film off the ground, that Lynch Frost Productions is going to be super PO'd about this, and and Showtime's going to come crashing down and stuff like that. It's like, well, I never really was in contact with any of them, but at any moment they could have shut it down, but they didn't, because they knew my intent was not to profit off this, or they knew where I was coming from.
Right.
And also I think they were kind of like, I get in the back of my mind that they were kind of curious to see what I was going to do with this thing, and I think, from what I've heard, I haven't got an official confirmation from anybody in Lynch Frost Productions who've seen it, but I have heard that probably many of them have seen it. And, so that makes me happy.
Nice.
Yeah. It's always good to think or know that they have seen your work or what you've put out there based on Lynch's art. And
for obviously, reasons, they can't come out and say, everybody watch this, because that would be like giving the stamp of approval. It would be like telling, Showtime or them saying, this thing's canon. And so they have to kind of just pretend it doesn't exist. But by them pretending it doesn't exist, it's acknowledging its existence.
Anything bad for them. It's not like there's like, how dare you do this or something like that. There's the fact that they have nothing negative to say about your work is a positive.
That's what I'm saying. And I think that me reaching out to Sabrina and letting them know what my intent was and what it was gonna. I said, listen, I know you can't confirm or deny, but it's gonna be dealing with Annie Blackburn. Is this something? If you guys are gonna be dealing with this, just tell me, stop, go away. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They said, no, I can't wait to see this thing. So I think in many ways she is. Again, I don't have the confirmation about this, but I think she is a big reason why Showtime didn't go, what is going on? Because I think she said, don't worry about this thing.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a fan who loves Twin Peaks and they want to share.
Right. But I got to tell you, though, I was a little nervous when the pre-production on the film took a while longer than I was expecting it to. I was thinking at any minute I'm going to get the notice saying, stop. Because there were all these, of course, when you dealing with crowdfunding campaigns and things take a little longer, you're going to be dealing with people accusing you of you stole the money or this, the kind of thing. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to be the moment where Showtime or Lynch Frost Productions, somebody contacts me and says, what is going on with this thing, and shut it down. And this is blowing up into a big deal.
Right.
So I was always nervous, but that never came. And I think because they sensed that I was going to get this thing done by hook or crook. So
yeah. Well, I'm glad they did it, because the movie came out I think fantastic. I watched the 4-hour cut a couple days ago. I didn't watch. I like how you have options. People can watch the 5 parts or the 4-hour cut. I went and opted in the 4-hour cut. You're very respectful of all the material, so there would be no reason why they would have a problem with it. I don't think.
And I've said to other people that I feel like this film. Listen, I love their work. Don't get me wrong, but this film almost smoothed things over for some people for season 3, and in any way, it just makes people like their work even more. And I've also said, Showtime can completely profit off this. If they want to make little Windom Earle dolls or Caroline Pop Funkos or whatever, Annie stuff, it's all your stuff. It's all your material. Go for it. But, it was fun being able to play in the sandbox. And I'm curious to know, just from your point of view, because I know you guys are just massive fans and know this material inside and out. I know when I was talking with Josh Eisenstadt, he was amazed how much I was able to put into the film. There's so many, I want to say just Easter eggs, but this connects to this and this, you can kind of see what if you guys know the material, it's you can kind of see what I'm doing.
Yes, totally. Before, we had you on today, and I was saying, I was like, I can't believe he brought in the books. He brought in season 3. He brought in season 2. He connected all these pieces. It was very impressive. And I think on someone watching, a big fan is going to enjoy all that. And someone who's maybe not a big fan is still going to enjoy it for what it is. But I think it's also one of those things you can watch again and again and get more out of it as well.
Yeah, because people have asked me when should you watch this, and I say you have to watch it kind of after season 3 for it to really kind of make sense. Especially, and we can talk spoilers because it's been out for a while, but especially with the ending, you kind of need season 3 to understand what that is. And of course, I didn't let on to anybody about the ending, so that when that ending happens, I think it surprised a lot of people. Especially when it hard cuts to Cooper and Carrie Page out there. It's oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're spoiling it, but I'm not even trying to spoil it. I actually like your ending better than I like season 3 ending. Maybe, the reason just for that is that there is this sense of hope and action, whereas I guess the conclusion of the actual season 3 is a little bit of sense of dread and confusion, and there's where do we go from here? And I'd rather have that more positive saying where we're going into action, we're gonna at least.
Well, I think that stems from as I was saying the other day, it's if you take Lynch's LA trilogy out of the equation, I think every one of his films has a happy ending, right? Eraserhead's bittersweet, Elephant Man's bittersweet, Dune's happy ending, Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart. He went back and changed the ending of Wild at Heart to have a happy ending, right? Fire Walk with Me, bittersweet, Straight Story, obviously happy. You know what I mean? So it's that guy likes happy endings. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to give it a happy ending and wrap up Twin Peaks, but maybe I'll kick the can a little 5 minutes down the road and kind of give it that feeling like it is kind of coming together.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously it's, it doesn't wrap up Twin Peaks, but emotionally, I feel like it wraps up this story, whereas like Annie didn't feel like she belonged. She was this new person that came into this town. And by the end, she's, one of kind of, the White Lodge team, I guess, And I just thought it'd be really cool just because originally when I first thought of the story years and years ago, I just assumed the movie was going to end with her giving the message to Laura. Like that was going to be pretty much like the end point. And then after season 3, I thought, well, I should kind of add what we can into this. And so I thought for about 5 minutes or so, when I was working on the script, I thought when she's staying outside Norma's house and you hear Carrie scream and the lights go out, I thought, well, that might be a good place to stop it, because then obviously we're at the end of season 3. She kind of knows whatever plan that Cooper's come up with, whatever it's in play. We could just have her go back in the house with Norma, kind of pan, have the camera pull back and have the credits go and whatever. And then I thought, wait a minute, she's visited Cooper as a kid. She's visited Laura as a kid and as a teenager. She's had a relationship with Cooper. This is the moment where you can actually have all 3 of them together in the same spot.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And I thought, okay, we'll do that. But instead of her teleporting over there, let's have her do, because this is the end of the film, let's have her do a walk through the town completely in darkness, and have her just walk to Laura's. And that gave me the excuse of like having her go by the diner, which we shot at 3:00 in the morning when nobody was on the road. Having her go by Donna's house, because I firmly believe that if it does continue in some way, that Donna is going to have to play some sort of role.
We can hope.
Well, the reason why I say that is because in part 17, when Cooper's watching James and Laura do their conversation, Lynch holds almost the entire conversation to the point where Laura says, even Donna doesn't know me. And then the next scene is when Sarah's in the house stabbing the picture, right, of Laura. She knocks over all the pictures except the Laura Donna picture. And so I'm thinking, okay, Donna's got to be some sort of, I mean, it may have just been a coincidence, but it's 2 scenes back to back where Donna is prominent. Yeah. And so I'm like, let's have her go by Donna's house and kind of acknowledge that, and then have her, you just don't even know where she's going. Some people don't. And then when it just hard cuts and we're outside Laura's house, it's I don't know. To me, it's just, as a Twin Peaks fan, it's like, that's fun.
Yeah,
it really was like the cherry on top. It really brought the whole movie together. And I do really love Laura saying, "Hi, Annie," and it's just like, and you kind of step back. It's like, Laura knows Annie. Of course, she knows Annie. I mean, she knows her from her bed and stuff. I mean, like,
well, that comes from because I always thought that in the movie that Laura was just drugged out of her mind and was just like, okay, this girl's in bed telling me the story, and then I thought, well, maybe she's not freaking out because she's seen her before. And so that's when I had her seeing her as a little kid and things like that. And the idea of having a little child saying, is it because of Bob? That really kind of hammers it home that this has been going on for a long time. And it's not like firewalking, because I mean, she says to Harold, he's been having me since I was 12. But according to the diary that Jennifer Lynch wrote, she had been aware of Bob prior to that even.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, well, this is going to be a little disturbing, but it kind of needs to be said, and so, and then also there's a moment in Scott Frost's book of Cooper as a little kid, and he's like sitting there by himself at school, and he talks about how this girl sits down next to him, doesn't say a word, and then gets up and leaves, and he asks her what her name is, and he says, I think her name was Anne something, right? And I thought, okay, I'm gonna make it Annie. And I thought that would just be kind of really, so if you know that moment in the book, it would just be like, oh my God, like it all is kind of connecting. Not that the writers and thought I don't think they all planned for it to connect like this, but it's just one of those happy accidents, where everything just kind of falls into place. If you work on the way Lynch and them do on that intuitive level, things will connect just because it's it's just the way you work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We talk a lot about Annie and we talk a lot about all that stuff, but the one dynamic which is Caroline and Windom Earle. I thought that was so interesting that it's like a prequel. We're getting how these two interact with each other, how Dale became friends with Windom, well, started working with him, and then he became like the third wheel of their marriage.
Right.
In a
Right.
weird way, right? Like
Right.
they're going bowling and all that stuff. They're hanging out. And like, I thought the actress who played Caroline, and I wrote her,
Charlotte Roy.
okay. She, I thought, did a fantastic job.
She did.
In my opinion, it was like scene stealing almost. She was just like, my attention was always on her when she was on screen. She almost like, this is way off point here, but I was like, she could have played Diane. She looked very reminiscent of Laura Dern.
She looked just like the actress though to me from as Caroline.
I know there was something about her that like yelled Laura Dern to me.
And some
people
people think of Nadine when they see her too, you know, because like, especially the way she's like slamming the door in his face and all that.
Yeah. Like, no, one question about her character though. We Ben and myself were talking about this. Is she seemed almost like she had different personalities. She was very outgoing, but like I wasn't sure if this was something that you did intentionally or the way she brought the character to life.
Especially the first encounter with Dale, she like closes the door on him and then opens the door. It's like, is she joking with him? Is she playing mind games with them, or what's going on?
What did she bring to the character, and what did you have on the page?
It was always written to be that. It's just that when you have somebody like act that, it's gonna become, you know, a little more elevated. The idea was that, okay, a lot of people, we never really see Caroline in the original show. We get a black and white little memory flashback of her, and then we see her in the Black Lodge, which honestly is not reality, right? It's like it's a, you know, Cooper's idea of her, and Cooper references Caroline in a romanticized way, right? Yeah. And that's the way you would think about somebody after they died, and so I thought to myself, okay, if I know what people are going to expect, they're going to expect Cooper to walk in the door, see Caroline. It's going to be, you know, star-crossed lovers right from the start. You know, let's keep this secret from Windom, and you know, this epic romance. And I'm thinking, no, that's completely wrong. It needs to begin with her slamming the door in his face. It also needs to accurately portray, in my opinion, what being married to Windom Earle for 10 years would do to somebody. Right? And because I mean, I think there's a part when you first watch the film, you're thinking, is this the way Windom and Caroline get their kicks? Do they like messing with the new guy? You know,
right.
I was thinking that, yeah.
Right. There's that aspect. It's just, you know, it's she, and I knew that her slamming the door, opening the door, slamming the door, what that would do is, one, it keeps us on our toes. It also keeps Cooper on his toes. And now in thinking about the show, if you look at Cooper's character, there is no reason for him, because even in the second season, he doesn't know that Windom attacked him. He has suspicions, but he says, Harry, I don't know. Right. So that said to me, okay, Cooper has to be attacked from behind, because he wouldn't know.
Right.
Also, how could Cooper not see this attack coming? And I don't mean just the impending doom of it. And I thought Caroline has to be, you know, sort of a bipolar personality, which would fit in with her marriage to Windom Earle. But she would have to be, you know, really happy and excited over here, you know, or distant and depressed over here, so that it would be this swinging pendulum, and Cooper would be like not knowing where she's going next. And so anybody who's been in a relationship with somebody like that knows that you're always concentrating on the moment, because the next moment you don't know what's going to happen, right? So if him and Caroline were just totally happy all the time, and this, you know, then he would be able to sense Windom coming. But if he's like swinging with Caroline, he's not paying attention to everything around him.
Interesting.
And then that would allow Windom to kind of come in do what he does.
That
And
makes
so I thought that that aspect of her character matched who I think she should be. And it wasn't until like, I mean, it wasn't like I thought for 20 years, like, oh, Caroline would be like this. But when you just stop and kind of think about what kind of person would marry Windom Earle, who would stay in that marriage, what that would do to somebody that, like, you know, she talks about Windom disappearing for days on end, you know, and the only thing that I never wrote this into the script, but because it was mostly from Cooper's point of view, that section, I think except for one scene, you never see Windom and Caroline alone. It's always from Cooper's kind of point of view. And I had to do that one moment in the hospital with her saying to Windom, you know, what happened to you? Just so that you knew that this wasn't like some sort of like kinky game they were playing, that they're, you know, that's when I kind of let you know that there's something really going on between these two. But the one scene that I thought would have been fantastic to see is I'd love to see Caroline like in the courtroom as a lawyer. like what, you know, like I bet you she could probably turn it off, because if you notice in the scenes with Windom and Cooper, she's very animated. And then when she's alone with Cooper, she's still herself, but it's more toned down. So it's almost like she's playing a role for Windom to kind of, you know, operatic in a way. But then she's much more quieter with Cooper, even though she is still, you know, surprising and erratic at times. She's not doing that insane laughter around Cooper, you know?
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, no, I think she's fantastic. And I mean, obviously without that section working, the Annie section, you know, wouldn't work. I mean, I remember even during pre-production, you know, it was taking so long to get it off the ground that I thought, should I cut one of the stories out? You know, and then, but people were saying to me like, but they feed off each other. And I said, I know that's the problem is, yeah, you could tell Annie's story separately, but the power of it they do feed off each other. And that was the original concept, right? Was that to have both women's stories being told and then have them meet. And this was before the final dossier, where I knew I had to do the whole I'm fine sequence with Annie in the room. So
I think this is what I love about the story is I'm really big into the non-linear storytelling. I think that's why I love that, you know, you go back and you go forward and you're in the middle and you're all but it just works well together. It's like I was watching, it's like, okay, you know, I don't feel like it's just disjointed or anything. It just feels like it flows, and the way you just bring it all together really works. I mean, I love it. I really like that.
I have music with David Bowie and Chris Isaac and Amanda Seyfried at the end. And that was the idea of like, you know, let's permeate this with you know, Twin Peaks people on the soundtrack as well, you know, and just so that you all, because like I thought Annie's stuff has to be more or less Twin Peaks in terms of music because she's in that area, but Pittsburgh cannot feel like Twin Peaks. It can't, because, you know, Cooper comes to the town and he's marveling at being in this town, right? If it feels exactly like Pittsburgh, why would he be wanting to move there, right? Looking at Dead Dog Farm and all that. So I thought, we got to do Windom and Cooper and Caroline's story all with like basically like Windom's record collection, like just like needle drops and, you know, things that make you feel like you're in some sort of 60s, 70s movie or something like that. And I thought that would be kind of fun because nobody would ever suspect, you know, that kind of music in this world. But
right.
I don't know. To me, it's like because it's Pittsburgh, it works. You know, if you were, you know, needle dropping, you know, Deer Meadow, I don't know if you could get away with that. You know?
Right. Right. Yeah, great soundtrack too, by the way. Really.
Oh yeah. People ask me all the time, like, well, how did you get away with that soundtrack? It's like, well, I can't make any money off the movie anyway, so you might as well just go all the way.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, it looked like you had a lot of fun with that. I mean, at first I was like, what? This is not Twin Peaks music, but it also is like all the music that you use was the feeling of these characters. You know what I mean? Like you were using music that really was kind of explaining them.
Which song stuck out to you as a, do you remember?
Well, I mean, the first one, of course, is Caroline because it's you know, she's walking down. I mean, there was a bunch of them, but I mean, it's you know,
I kind of had to do that one.
Yeah.
You know, so, but I mean, I love the very beginning, like when you see them at Glastonbury Grove and the ambulance is taking Annie away, and then the titles come on. That's when to me, I just feel like that's the most important part of the film in many ways, that first 5 minutes, because you kind of have to convince people that, you know, you're serious with this thing, you know?
Yeah. Your opening sequence, you know, I started up and I'm like, okay, this is either gonna be really good or really bad or somewhere in the middle.
Right.
But like that opening sequence does tell you, well, you're in for a treat. And then you do such a great job of introducing each character, and right away, you know who they are. You know their voices so well that when they speak, I'm hearing Dale Cooper. I'm hearing, you know, Windom Earle. I'm hearing them through their dialogue. And one piece of dialogue stands out, Major Briggs.
Yeah.
I loved his saying, it's so funny because now that I'm in my 40s, I kind of relate to what he says.
Well, that's the funny thing about time, actually. It's all relative. When you're young, time is something that seems to go on forever. Remember when you were a kid, how one whole day could feel like a lifetime?
I do.
Then, as you get older, time has a way of stepping on the gas pedal with all its might, so that the days in between the important events in your life feel like an eye blink.
That's depressing.
It's actually not as bad as it seems. Sometimes it's a blessing to go through life faster and faster.
How so?
That way you're not dwelling on the past and what you could have done to change it.
And all those days in between just fly by. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, did he just read my mind? And I'm like, but
that was your dialogue. That didn't. Some of the stuff I sense from other material of Twin Peaks, but that dialogue seemed original.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. That whole scene between Annie and him at the hospital. It's kind of like when that first dropped, someone contacted me and they said, "This feels like the way season 3 would have been in 1991." Like if they had continued on, it's like that almost seems like a natural scene you would see at the premiere, you know?
Yeah.
Because it just makes sense. I mean, why wouldn't Major Briggs and Annie, you know, communicate? They're the only ones that have come out.
That's true. And you incorporate the Bookhouse Boys more, which is something I think the fans have always wanted more of. We have, Ben and myself, have always wanted more of the Bookhouse Boys.
Yeah, the secret society. Why aren't we using them more? I mean, like,
yeah, they're like.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. There was a lot more of them in the script, but because of the pandemic, we had to cut all of them out except the one that Annie talks to. We were because at one point in the film, the character of Dean is bringing Annie to the station, and so we were going to have a scene in the station with Major Briggs, and it was going to be like, you know how like right before the Miss Twin Peaks, that, you know, they're like how there's like Bookhouse Boys and military people in the sheriff's station. They're all like running stuff about Windom Earle, and
yeah,
they got those VHS tapes and everything. I thought that's what I wanted. I wanted to have kind of a flurry. They knew that something horrible had happened, you know, the doppelganger's out, whatever. And we were going to see inside the military. And that's when Major Briggs was going to talk to Annie about what they wanted her to do. Well, pandemic happened. We couldn't have more than, you know, 5 people at a time together. We lost the location. And so, you know, Maddie, who plays Annie and helped me produce the film, she said to me, well, what are we going to do? Because it's kind of a big scene and we hadn't shot it yet. And I thought, well, how about Dean's walking you guys to the station, and then we'll just play off that moment in episode 16 that Tim Hunter directed where Major Briggs is just standing in the pathway, right? And I thought, we'll just do that so that we'll get the information out to you that way. And so that's kind of a condensed version of when they meet him in the woods and they talk to him. That was supposed to be like in a station with a lot more people around. And then we were also going to have a moment where the Bookhouse Boys were going to form like a perimeter around Annie at one point and lead her into the woods to Jack Rabbit's palace. And again, we couldn't do that. So we changed it so that basically we to that scene in the film where she lays down on the bed and says the prayer and then closes her eyes, and then she's in the red room. So that eliminated about 20 minutes of film that we never shot. We couldn't shoot it.
Right.
But I thought, if I ever did a sequel, I'd figure out a way to put that in, which is never going to happen, folks. But
yeah. Let's petition. We want our sequel here.
no. But anyway,
you talk about locations. I mean, you did get
yeah.
a lot of great locations. You mentioned Jack Rabbit. I mean, that is really cool to be able to get that scene before of what's happened to it now, where it's pretty much gone.
It's gone. Yeah. And, just to film there and it was kind of magical because it just ended up being that we were able to shoot it roughly around the day that it would have been in the show by the show's timeline in terms of like late March, right? And so it was so weird because everywhere else it was like the ground was fine, but just around Jack Harrow's palace there was the snow, like right around there. And I thought, because that was one thing that always bugged me about Fire Walk with Me, as much as I love that movie, is that Lynch shot it in the fall and not in February and March. And fall in Snoqualmie, North Bend looks nothing like February and March. If you look at the pilot, okay, there's snow everywhere in that pilot. And you look at the mountains, and then you look at the fall in Fire Walk with Me, and it looks like, a pleasant fall day, right? There's no evidence that it's a deep February. So I really wanted to kind of get that cold feeling sometimes with Annie. And that's why you see like there's a lot of, obviously fog and so, but I thought I didn't plan for the snow to be there because, you just kind of show up and you're going to do what you're going to do. Right.
Yep.
And when I saw the snow, I was like, well, that's kind of cool. It kind of reminded me of sort of like a fairy tale Wonderland, and her running through the woods and stuff in that dress. It looks like Alice in Wonderland or something.
Yeah. Sure. I remember seeing you were putting out trailers, and I don't know if it was a drone or you just had this, like, it was up high, and it was like the first, I don't know if it was one of the first trailers, and it just looked beautiful just seeing her running through the forest, and it's like, oh, it looks so good. Yeah,
that was, behind the tree, you guys have been there, I'm sure, haven't you?
Yeah.
But if you go behind the tree, there is sort of like a dirt kind of, you can, you're not climbing the tree, but you're kind of stepping on the dirt, and you can get that kind of high angles and stuff like that. Awesome. I was amazed that we shot 5 hours there, getting all the coverage. Not one time did someone pass us, not one ranger, nothing. We were like, wow. And I thought, because at first, the idea was like, well, no, no one's gonna stop us. I mean, it's just, we're just, it's not like we have a lot of equipment out there, but Annie is covered in blood. Yeah. So, I mean, if it was just her in a dress, I wouldn't worry about it. But because she's completely made up, which means we had to do makeup and that kind of thing, I was a little nervous if people walked by with their dogs and saw a girl covered in blood. I mean, I was like, how fast is the Rangers going to get here?
Right.
So, but anyway, it was, Olali State Park, where we did a magical place. I mean, it's like 55 Twin Peaks locations all in one spot.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, just from a logistical production point of view, I mean, God, they were so smart to shoot there. I mean, everything's right there. It's like, move 10 feet, turn the camera, here you go.
And I do love that you connected things that I think some of us fans always thought. I mean, they don't actually say in season 3 the White Lodge, but I think we all assume that the fireman is from the White Lodge. And I love that you have Annie as the agent of the White Lodge. And I think she's the implication is that Freddie is one and Cooper is one.
And so I thought, okay. And then obviously Laura or Carrie is gotta be one, because she was like supposedly birthed there. Mm-hmm. So, I thought, Annie would be sort of this other, and she would sort of have the empathy that the firemen would want, because her coming from a religious background and that kind of thing. And so just the idea of like having all three of them together, and Freddie kind of like, at the command center, talking to them, wherever. I thought that's kind of fun. And I don't know. And just from a Twin Peaks like fans perspective, it's just like it fits. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, I never said to people like, accept this as canon, but one of the pitches I made about this was that if you are a fan of the show, it's not going to take away from your fandom of the show. It's not going to say you have to get over this hurdle in order to accept this. It's like, it's going to be, as someone said to me, it's actually plays like a giant missing piece to the whole thing. And
right.
And the idea too, it was like, towards the ending, having Annie telling Cooper, Windom Earle's right over there, right? And
I love that.
in the diner. And yes, it works as a joke because you've been built, the movie's been building Windom Earle as this, and the show did too. It's this formidable foe. And basically it's like he's taken out because one girl told Cooper, he's right over there.
Yeah.
And then that frees up the entire back half of season 2 so that Gordon, Major Briggs, and Cooper can make their plan about Judy. Because that was the one thing that bothered me about season 3 is like, when did they have time? Because Gordon he showed up, gave the gun to Cooper, and then he's flirting with Shelley the rest of that episode.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I thought we need to give them that excuse to have that meeting, and that gives them 4 episodes or and they don't have to worry about Miss Twin Peaks or any of that stuff. So it gives them the rest of season 2. And so I thought, okay, that's kind of a fun thing there. But I have to ask you guys, since you've worked with Kenneth Welsh before his passing, what do you think he would have thought of this? Do you think he would have enjoyed this movie?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think you had fun with Windom Earle. I think that the actor is so much fun and seemed to have a lot of fun, like being both charming and there's definitely a menacing side to him. So I think he would really love that, and I think that he would really get a kick out of.
I did reach out to his agent during pre-production. Like, I don't know, would he be interested? And his agent told me he had retired, and so I was so happy when I heard that he was on your show, because I was like, wow, and because I mean, obviously we're dealing with a younger Windom Earle, but I would have made some concessions if he had come back. So.
I know it's funny sometimes, when we try to reach out to agents, we get nowhere. And with him, he was on Facebook, and I just messaged him through Facebook to do some stuff for us on the show. But sometimes it's one of those things. It's like we want to be professional and go through their people, and then the people sometimes don't even bother to reach out to their their clients and stuff to even let us know things. So it's That's too bad. Yeah, it would have been kind of cool if he would have.
I mean, you mentioned Charlotte as Caroline. I think Paul as Windom did a great job. I think you kind of believe him. Nico had the impossible task of playing Cooper. I told him, I said straight up, I said, the character was created for Kyle because it's an extension of who he is as a person. So that's why it fits him so well. And another actor playing this part, it's going to be. People aren't going to accept it right away because you're a new person, but because we're dealing with Windom Earle and Caroline and it's earlier, you don't have to come in and mimic Kyle. You can play this as, the new recruit, the novice. And I had him cut his hair, not like Cooper, but as Jeffrey Beaumont in Blue Velvet. So that it would.
He was charming and I thought he came off genuinely in love with Caroline, and I thought they came out very passionate together, so it worked.
But I mean, I gotta tell you, the sleepless nights of you know what I mean, like the fans are gonna kill me, and I said, listen, I'm gonna protect you. I'm going to keep you in this bubble where it's like, I'm not going to let you get too far away from where Cooper needs to be. And I said, if you just trust me, you're not going to fall on your face about this, and I'm happy to see if people really do like him, because he's not competing against Kyle at all. He's doing his own thing. The only scene is the season 2 diner scenes, which we had looked forever to find a diner and we couldn't find one. And so we ended up doing it in this like really rinky dink little place, which I mean, it was cute, but it didn't really work. But then, do you know Maya Lundgren, the artist, the Twin Peaks artist? I'm sure you've seen her pictures.
I know the
everywhere.
name, yeah.
Anyway, so she and I know each other, and she says, you know what I've been working on? I said, what? I've been working on a complete 3D diorama of the Double R Diner. And I said, what does that mean? She says, well, basically, wherever I decide to set up my angle for my illustration, that it will configure where in the diner it is. Right. And so I thought, can that work in like film? And she goes, probably. And so the effects guy, Ben, that I was working with, Benjamin Oliver, he cut everybody out of my footage. Because we didn't green screen it. So he had to cut everybody out. Wow. And then he put them in the diner. So they're in the exact spots where they would be in the Double R Diner. And, I think it's, I didn't
like, know that was a special effect. I just was like, they're in the diner. Like,
I wish, but that would have been a whole lot easier.
Yeah. What was your favorite part of making this film?
I mean, I think one, the fact that people believed that I could even do this, right? So people believed in it. Pre-production was not my favorite because
There
was a lot of work, and I guess we didn't realize how much work it was going to be. We figured, okay, Windom, Caroline's house, Annie in the hospital, and then the rest of us kind of like everywhere. But again, we didn't think it was going to be a 4-hour film. So it's like when I was editing, I was like, oh my God, this thing is huge, but anyway, so pre-production was really hard because we had a lot of actors jump on and then realize, oh, this is going to take a while, or, some people think it's like, this is going to be really fun, right? Yeah. Because for legal reasons, we have to call it a Twin Peaks fan film. So they think it's going to be silly and have some cherry pie and coffee. And of course, anybody who watches the film knows, oh my God, these actors are really going in for actual like emotion, like Annie breaking down outside Glastonbury Grove and yelling, I'm sorry. Like, it's like, that's not campy. So that was hard. But once we got the film off the ground, it moved super fast because we primarily shot on weekends. But once we got the cast, it just moved until we had to shut down because of the pandemic. Yep. And then we came back in the summertime, finished up about a week's worth of stuff. And then it took me a year and a half to edit it because I had to wait until the vaccine came out for people to come over and do the ADR. So it just,
you don't even think of that, right? The voiceovers, right? I mean, for people that don't, right. They had to add their voice back in.
There was that. And, there was a lot of locations because we couldn't shut down streets and stuff like that. So, sometimes they had to like redo some of their lines and stuff like that. So it was a process. And I mean, by the time the film came out, I think a lot of people kind of forgot the film was being made because it took so long. But then when it came out, it was just like, the response to it, the people who have seen it, that go in with an open mind, they seem to really, really enjoy it. And they seem to really understand the intent, and which is another reason why I don't think I've gotten any angry, hostile emails from like Showtime and CBS, because they see it. It's like, how much of a love letter can you really do to the show? It's like, and it only boosts their property more, and
totally.
So, I was always hoping that like Frost would reach out and say, hey, do you want to do a book for an offshoot book about the film, or not the film, cool. But of the show or something like that, not keeping my hopes up or anything, but just saying like, you can see how much respect we all had for the show. And, and I think the actors did really great. And, I couldn't be more proud of it. I'm glad it's done though. That was, my favorite part was when it was like, it's pretty much done. Thank God. You know what I mean? And like, then when I put out the trailer, I was super nervous. Like, what are people going to say about this thing? Cause are they going to just completely trash it?
Right.
But I think the visual, there's a moment of Annie at the church, right? Just for anybody who hasn't seen it, about 10 minutes from me is the church where they shot Vertigo. And so it was the day of the pandemic where we were going to go on lockdown. Nobody was there. So we went up there and shot that sequence of Annie there. And I thought, well, it has to be there because Vertigo is a crucial part of Twin Peaks with Madeline and Judy and Ferguson.
Yeah, right.
And so let's shoot it at the location where James Stewart and Kim Novak were. So that's kind of fun. That's definitely an Easter egg there.
Yeah. We need to go into all the things that so you wrote the script, you were the director, and you were the camera person
and the editor.
That's a lot of roles. It's a lot of hats to wear. I don't think people understand all the work that goes into one person.
You do one at a time, right?
Right, but still.
So the script, because we had so long in pre-production, I was really able to fine tune that script exactly. It was pretty much ready to go, like a few months in, but when you have so much downtime, you would be like, oh, yeah, that's a good line. I'll change that. So by the time we were ready to go, we had it. I felt like, when you watch the pilot and the second episode and the third episode before Harley, I love Harley Payton, but when it was just Lynch and Frost for those first 4 hours of season 1 of Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
you feel like it's incredibly written and then directed, whereas like sometimes you feel like, okay, this was kind of written and then Lynch put his flourish on it and directed it, right? So I wanted it to kind of feel like those opening episodes of season 1 where it's like it felt very written. And then because there's like like when Cooper's reciting the poem to Caroline and stuff like that. It's like, that's, that's like, it's a 10-minute scene where them sitting on the couch, you know what I mean? It's like Lynch would never do a 10-minute scene of them just sitting on the couch talking like that,
Yeah.
So, but then, he directed, and then, I mean, photograph it. But then editing obviously is, after it's all shot. But, I mean, we did a lot of takes. Honestly, that not have to do with, sometimes the camera issue. Sometimes it was like, they're getting off work and then doing a scene. They have to kind of get out of that work mode. You know what I mean? And it takes them a few takes to get out of that. And then to get into the character and stuff like that. So if you think about how hard it was to make this film, it really was. I mean,
and now all you want it to be seen. I mean, it's great. It's available for free on YouTube. So I mean, you can go.
It's got about
Queen
60...
of Hearts, your YouTube channel, right? That is available to
watch. I put it on the Annie Blackburn channel.
Yeah, and
it's gotten about 60,000 views so far,
nice.
Which is great.
That's great.
But at the same time, though, I mean, when Twin Perfect's video has 2.5 million, it's like.
I feel like that's just clickbait. It's like, all the answers are solved, and
it's completely clickbait. I wouldn't have I would never title a video that, but that's just me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I don't know. It's like you're asking for trouble with doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's gotten 60,000 views so far. So that's great. I mean, obviously getting the word out through you guys is wonderful, because that will hopefully, bring more people to watch it. And I think that, if you are a Twin Peaks fan, you're nervous and you're like, well, I only really like David Lynch or Mark Frost doing it. I don't think you'll find this disrespectful. I really don't.
No, not at all. And I kind of feel at this point, when it comes to Twin Peaks related things, I don't think, in my opinion anyway, I don't believe canon is a word we should be using. I kind of feel like, because the books Mark Frost's books are kind of like his own thing. Then you have the series itself.
Scott Frost. I mean,
and all these, and I think it all comes together, and you can pick and choose, and you can manipulate things to make things make more sense, because obviously sometimes people didn't line things up correctly. So I kind of feel like Twin Peaks has become like an art house itself, where you can just enjoy it however you like, because
just celebrate that we all love Twin Peaks, and just enjoy that we're getting to tell more stories about Twin Peaks.
Totally.
And I think I'm giving you basically 3.5 more hours in this world.
Exactly.
And so it takes place after season 2 and then before season 1. Like the opening scene with Annie in the hospital, and Norma's there, and she's wearing the exact same outfit that she was wearing at the second season finale. And you really feel like the guilt of Norma, because her sister's been kidnapped, and what is she doing? She's snapping her fingers at the fireplace with Ed, dealing with Nadine, right? Yeah. So it's like much like Shelley, she's always putting the boyfriends ahead of family, right? And so that's one of the kind of the running arcs in Queen of Hearts 2, is Norma going from not even being able to look Annie in the eye in the hospital, like she's just wants to make sure she's safe and then gets out of there, to the point that by the end of the film, they're truly sisters. They're having dinner together, and I give Norma that giant monologue when Annie's in the chair right before the I'm fine sequence, which I do want to say, I mentioned this before, but I'll throw this kind of tidbit out there. Before Peggy Lipton passed, she did express interest in playing the part in this film because of that.
Hear this? Wow.
Because of that monologue, when Annie's in the chair, and she said, "Yeah, I'm really interested in this." And then by the time it was even a possibility of getting it made, obviously she wasn't here anymore. But I mean, it didn't go very far in discussions,
right?
And I think the actress did a fantastic job. I can't even imagine if we had Peggy Lipton like redoing Norma for that sequence. That would have been incredible.
The fact that she was interested a little bit in it is got to say a lot about your
I think I think her and Ray Wise were kind of a little bit expecting a bit more in season 3. So I know Ray Wise, from what I understand, doesn't even really want to talk about season 3 very much, so because he was the I don't want to speak for him, but he was the kind of the flag waver for so many years.
Yep.
Twin Peaks, I'd love to come back, and then he comes back for one line.
Oh my God. And I thought he would come back at the end of that season. I thought we'd see him again. But
Yeah, I thought that he and Philip Gerard was going to help Dougie. I thought he was going to see him both or something, or something like that. But from what I understand, Ray Wise came, did his line, and then they said, "Thank you, Ray, and have a good day." And then he said, "What? I'm wrapped," because no one got the script except Kyle, right?
Yeah.
So he didn't know if he was coming back or not. So, but yeah, obviously, Sarah, who played Norma, she's a fantastic job, and maybe it would have taken everybody out if Peggy Lipton all of a sudden showed up in the film. But
Yeah,
again, it was before Sarah was even cast in the film, so it was just a preliminary thing. But it just goes to show you that there were ideas out there that people seem to kind of gravitate towards. Like I always thought before I met Maddie, and she's amazing as Annie, but a year before I met her, when I was trying to get this thing off the ground, I had these fantasies in my head which were never going to happen. I was like, well, what if we got Heather Graham to come back, because this would be such an amazing underground production.
oh yeah.
Sort of like this would be like her Sigourney Weaver and Aliens thing, where it's like, she kind of comes back and owns the role, but she hasn't even liked one tweet about the film, so I don't even think she remembers the part, to be honest. But which is weird.
Did she really recognize any Twin Peaks people? That she doesn't. I never see her really speak about Twin Peaks.
Yeah, there's certain people like her and Amanda Seyfried who never even acknowledge Twin Peaks, and right? It's yeah, but I think the movie ended up coming out great. The cast is great, and
Good.
I couldn't be happier. And it's funny though. It's like if Mark Frost had made one change in the final dossier, the film wouldn't be made. If Thor had not made his short film, I never even would have thought about doing this. So it's like there's so many little things in there that's like that made this possible.
Yeah.
If we had started the film 1 month later shooting, we wouldn't be able to finish it because the actors would have moved during the pandemic. And so the film never would have been finished. So like everything just happened the way it did. And so when I think back over some of the hardships or people who were involved or not involved, and then they, whatever, it's like, it's hard for me to hold any gripes against anybody, because I feel like it happened the way it needed to happen. Yeah, another version could have existed out there, but I'm very happy with the way this version came out. And
Yeah.
and that,
And so was it like 4 or 5 years? How long did it take you from?
well, we fall of 2019 is when we started. Then we shut down in March because we were just doing weekends. So it's like 6 months of weekends, right?
Yeah.
And then did a little bit of filming in the summer of 20. And then I did the rough cut until January 21. And then we did the ADR in the summertime, and then act 1. Now, the reason we were always going to put it as one film, but I separated it into 5 acts because some of the effects were taking a long time. And so I thought, well, what if I just I didn't want to postpone it again. So I just said, okay, we'll just put out act 1 and see what people think of it. And that came out at the end of November 21. Right. So that by the time the whole film was out, it was June of 22. So, about the length it took Nolan to make The Dark Knight.
Nice.
or one of the Star Wars films. Right. And so when every once in a while we get somebody going, this film's taking forever. And it's like, well, it's still coming out earlier than Return of the Jedi did.
Yeah.
So, and I, in between Fire Walk With Me and Lost Highway was 5 years. So, come on, guys. And I mean, even Lynch spent 5 years making Eraserhead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's, and that's a 90-minute film. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, and he got married, divorced, remarried, like all while making one movie.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I can't even imagine. Can you imagine Christmas, like 3 years into that film? Like, David, when are you going to be done with this thing? Right. So when people gave me crap about it, I was like, again, Lynch and Eraserhead, and also I was so thrilled that he made Inland Empire with a terrible, Circuit City camcorder, because I thought no matter what,
It's better.
I felt my film will look as good or if not better than Inland Empire.
Yeah.
And so just so people know, I've gotten a lot of crap about this too, but we shot this entire film with an iPhone 11.
That's awesome.
Wow. I
and
didn't, I had no idea.
and a GoPro 7.
Wow. Isn't that
So
It looks great. It looks great.
I was saying that the lighting looks good, the framing is great, the quality of the video is excellent. So
It
wow.
moves, like the scenes, like you almost forget you're watching a fan film because sometimes you know the difference
Right.
between a fan film, but yours, the production value is very high. It looks very high. It's very well. You're knowledgeable in doing what you're doing, so it looks really good. And I had no idea you used an iPhone.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. We wanted to be able to shoot in places that maybe we didn't have permits for.
Yeah.
And so instead of like, bringing in all this camera equipment, if you go in with a phone, no one's going to say anything.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, talking about production value, we got a hospital to let us shoot there.
I swear to God, I thought that was like a room. You put up a curtain because I was like, that's an easy one and done. But I didn't know you really shot.
Well, I mean, that doesn't look like a bedroom, does it? That room, because you can see the bathroom door and But like when her and Dean escape from the hospital, you see them running down the hallways of the hospital, and the nurses with the Tulpa Annie and all that kind of things. And I think that my wife goes, that to me is what gives it the value, because it's like you realize, oh, it looks like you're really at Calhoun Memorial Hospital, and again, putting Annie. You're not green screening her. She's at Jack Rabbit's palace. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, so, that's where, we had, like, we would get costumes, either Goodwill, or we would go to costumes like Amazon. We would wear them with the tags, return them to Amazon, get our money back, put that money into other stuff. Nice. So we were able to like make the budget bigger than it was, because we knew, okay, we only need this dress for this moment here, so we'll get this and then we'll return it. So you can stretch it out, and that was kind of a fun thing just from a low budget point of view. It's like, how can we, like, there's a moment where Caroline disappears for a while, right? And she comes back as a prostitute, and that's taken from Scott Frost's book. And I wanted it to be where Cooper and Windom Earle like pick her up at sort of like a police station, and she was gonna be in an interrogation room, and then that scene was gonna happen there. We couldn't find any interrogation room that would work. We were looking for those, those cinder block rooms that you would see back in the old days. All the new interrogation rooms look too modern and nice. So we couldn't do that. And then I thought, well, because Wyndham's probably responsible for her disappearance, he would want to make the exchange as private, as low key as possible. So let's have them do it like at a seedy motel. And then so we ended up shooting it at a seedy motel. But the lighting behind Caroline, I mean, it just looks like a scene from Inland Empire where, and in fact, she even quotes Inland Empire in that scene. But I mean, that surprised a lot of people when she disappeared and then comes back as a prostitute. It's like,
but it was in the book. It was in the book.
Yeah.
It was in the book. And, it's, and of course she had to go through something because, according to the show, Windom and Cooper were assigned to, be on her detail. So, there was all that as well. And, I mean, just seeing her and then Annie in the same dresses and stuff like that, was really something, because it's one thing to like think about it, and then you see the actors standing in front of you wearing these dresses. It's like, oh my god, like we're really making this, like, this is crazy.
You got a lot of great outfits that really bring you back to the series. It's like, wow, that's pretty close to what was on the show.
So there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you guys about. One is the recreation of Annie and Laura's bed. That looks like it's, people said when I showed them a still, they thought I sent them a still Fire Walk with Me, because it looks almost, she's
it looks good. It really is. It's the way it was framed and the way that they're dressed. Yeah, it really feels like Fire Walk with Me.
The red room, I was impressed by the red room.
So what we did with that is we actually got a school gymnasium. And if you go up on stage, they have the first drapes come in, and then you have the second drapes come in, right? So, they do the two drapes, right? Yep. So we knew by having both drapes closed, you had the hallway, right? Yeah, and then when you opened up both drapes, you had the full room. So what we did is we just got the flooring, and then we just depending on what the room was, we just closed the drapes. And then they were black and gray drapes. We couldn't find red velvet. You would think we would be able to, we couldn't.
Yeah.
So we just ended up like changing that all in After Effects, all the drapes to red. Because one thing I've noticed when people make their red rooms is, again, I'm not knocking anybody, but they make it very small and petite for you to get pictures and things like that. And one of the things that I've always liked about the Black Lodge is the depth. So like when they're in the hallway, you can see it's a real long hallway. So I wanted that moment, like at the beginning when before Annie gets pulled out of the lodge, like, because we never see that in the show. We see the drapes and then they're there at Glastonbury Grove. I wanted to see the doppelganger run down and grab her, you know, but in order to do that, you have to pick up speed, which means you're going to have to run down a hallway. And that's where the GoPros come in, because then you can actually, if you have them in the center and away from that fisheye lens part, you can go as fast as possible and get that speed. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to kind of have some Scorsese camera movements in what is essentially a static environment, right? So that was a hard thing, but I mean, I think, you know, again, it's like you can make it work if you just kind of think about it. But if you ever want to create a red room, you know, seriously, get a high school gymnasium and then color the drapes red after Effects. What did you think of that whole like flashback of Annie when she goes back and you see like the whole thing with her mom and her stepdad? That the
whole dad part, was that
in the final dossier.
in any of the books, or was that something that you created?
It's in the final dossier.
Oh, it is in the final dossier, because it's funny. At least when back in the day in the 90s, I was like, oh, it's the boyfriend was the one that abused her. I just assumed. And then to bring in this father, it's like, whoa, is Cameron coming up with this? And I didn't even realize it was in the dossier that it was.
It's in the final dossier. The boyfriend's not. I don't think he's in the dossier. So I just combined the two. I was like, the one thing I did add was the mom throwing her out. Yeah. I thought, how is Annie going to even contemplate taking her own life? Right. And I thought, okay, if the mom throws her out, the dad makes a pass at her, and the boyfriend dumps her, it's like a 1, 2, 3, and also the fact that it's a flashback, but it's also like she's still in the Black Lodge. So it's sort of like the Black Lodge kind of recreating the worst day of her life, because in the way Maddie talked about it, she said she sees it as the lodge can't kill her, so it's going to make her kill herself, you know. And how do you do that? You're going to redo the worst day of your life. And magically, we ended up shooting that scene just after Christmas. And so in the final dossier, that whole scene takes place around Christmas. So we were able to, you know, have the Christmas trees up and the lights and stuff like that. And so I was like, oh my God, it's actually that's when you feel like it's coming together. It's like, oh my God. Right.
I love seeing the religious, you know, photos. You have Jesus there and things like that. It's like, oh yeah, I feel like this would be her home. This would be, you know, her family's very religious, and this. Ooh. And
you have to see her mom kind of, you know, treating her as like, you know, she's having Annie in the house you know, the men are always going to look at her and not Vivian, right? And we all know how vain Vivian is as MT Wentz as the show goes on later, you know. So I thought, yeah, she's very man focused. She may not like the men like Ernie. She, you know, she doesn't. I think she's tolerating Ernie, but she's using him to get to a certain spot. So I wanted to kind of show the mom. And then there's a moment in there too after the mom throws Annie out. Annie like pauses and you hear like screeching tires for a second. And that's because in the book it says the dad drove away, the mom Vivian chased after him and knocked his car off the cliff and he died. And I get these wild at heart flashbacks of Uncle Pooch going down the hill, right? And so I thought okay, so I wanted to have that moment of the screeching tires and you hear that. And so I mean there's a lot of things in there that the you know, if you're a fan, you'll get a kick out of. But you know, I mean, I think, like I said, all the actors are great. But you know, Maddie as Annie, I mean, it's kind of a hard thing to play, you know, that whole part. But by the end of the film, I mean, you feel like you understood her whole arc. And hopefully after people watch the movie, you kind of realize why I wanted to tell the story and why, you know, why it may have taken a while to do. But I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it will be looked at very fondly, because this is the only, probably, okay, I don't want to say forever, maybe not permanently, but right now it's the only movie that's ever going to show, you know, the I'm fine part from Mark Frost's book. You know, it's the only part that's going to show Windom and Caroline. They're probably never going to tell that story.
Right.
So it's like, this is it, folks, you know. So, and it's as close as they're probably ever going to get to, you know, that the story that has already been concocted.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Good stuff. Well, congratulations on completing it. I mean, that is amazing, and you did a fantastic job with it. And if people haven't seen it, it's free. Go to YouTube. You can check it out. I mean,
it's free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
And you don't, you know, it's if it offends you, you know, you didn't, you just walk away from it.
If it offends you, go make your own film.
I mean, honestly, that's not necessarily a bad idea. Like, I'm hoping that that this might encourage people to go do their own. I'll watch them. I love this world, you know. And it's like, you know, if you're not just like kind of throwing it together, you know, I'll probably still watch that too. But, you know, I would love to see people who really love this material like tell a story in this world, because there's a lot of them that you could tell. I mean, season 3 alone has like 4,500 open ends. I mean, go for it. You know?
So true.
It's
Pick
not
a character.
It's not hard to do your own Roadhouse booth scenes, folks.
Yeah.
You know.
So what's next for you? I mean, do you have any ideas about maybe making another film, or are you sticking?
I'm working on stuff, writing some stuff. Again, it all depends on, you know, just like what you think you can raise, and, you know, because that's a big part of it, and and who you think you can, you know, get for it, and you know, what do you want to spend a year of your life making? You know, I mean, it's I mean, I love this material, and you know, but when people ask me like, oh, would you ever do another Twin Peaks film again? I said, maybe if I had, like, you know, the studio behind me. You know what I mean? Like, you know, if Frost and Lynch was like, I don't want to do it anymore, but get some young up and comers to do it, you know, like, I'll gladly throw my hat in the ring, you know, but I would never try and do this again for $20,000.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's just a lot to, you know, it's a huge production. We had no crew. It was myself and Maddie, like, doing everything. If an actor was on set and they were able to help out, they would like help us carry some stuff or whatever, you know, but it was pretty much, you know, us and a couple people helping without hair and makeup, you know, and
that
was it. We had no crew. I mean, imagine if we had a crew.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know,
great. So,
well, I appreciate it, because honestly, it's like, I love hearing people's reactions to the film, but I've been really curious about, you know, people like you who actually, not saying the other people don't, but like, you guys have been doing a podcast for, you know, a long time about this show. You know this show ins and out. You've talked to so many of the cast members. You put out a book about your show, right? I mean, it's like, I really wanted to hear what you guys had to say about it.
I was most impressed with, you did your homework. I mean, you really knew the material, you knew all the books, you knew the shows, and I love how you just incorporated that in. And as a longtime fan, I was like, yeah, this is good stuff.
Well, thank you for that. And again, just I mean, the whole Cooper Caroline stuff, that alone, I think, is worth the price of admission. You know, take the Annie stuff out of it. Again, it's like the idea of, well, I could have cut it in half and just made one of the stories, but I think the film needed to be both. Otherwise, it's just, what are you doing? You know, if it just ended with Caroline dead, what benefit does that give us?
Right. Oh, it's definitely it's richer to intertwine these two and see how they kind of collide. It's definitely
right. And it's not like combining Caroline with Little Nicky or something. I mean, Annie, Annie and Caroline are intertwined from the very start of season 2. I mean, again, it's the failure and the redemption arc, right? Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't write it in the script, but you know, if I could have had if I had, like, you know, a bigger budget and that kind of thing, I would have loved to have restaged the Miss Twin Peaks contest, because I would have loved to have seen Lana win. right? Because Annie's no longer in the running, right? Solana would be the winner. And I would have just loved to see like Annie and Dean just like having some punch in the back going, cheers. Like,
That'd be great. Well, can you share with everybody where they can view this and share like how they can follow you, and especially your YouTube channel? Do you call it a video podcast, or what do you call your?
It's funny. Joel thought I was mad at him once because he did a whole listing of like the best Twin Peaks podcasts, and I wrote him. I said, "Where's my name?" And he goes, "Well, you're a YouTube video maker."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Hey, but all I do is talk," you know. And it's funny to see that there are people like Joel that like literally differentiate a podcast versus a video thing. I always assumed we were like, I mean, I do videos too, but for the most part, I do talking head stuff because to be honest, years ago, I used to put out more videos or creative videos, and YouTube would like sometimes just randomly when Google bought them out, they would like shut down YouTube channels and stuff. And I got so irritated with that. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do talking head stuff so that if they do pull it down, who cares? I didn't put a lot of time and energy into it.
Yeah.
So I ended up carrying over. But then I see like Take the Rings videos, and I'm like, you bastard! Like I want to make stuff like that. Oh, that video he did with John Thorne. I mean, like it literally brought me to tears. I was like, oh my God, Jeremiah, what are you doing?
Right.
But like if I made a video like that, YouTube would probably yank down my channel. So
Right.
I'll let Take the Ring do it.
But I like what you do. You've had a lot of great guests on. You guys had a lot of great conversations and topics. I've really enjoyed. I can't believe it's been 10 years that you've been doing this, but
God help me.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
To be honest, I did it originally because probably like you guys, nobody was really talking about Twin Peaks. I mean, yeah, the Gold Box was out. I think it was on Netflix, but people weren't talking about it. So I thought it'd be fun to just kind of, because what happened was, honestly, I interviewed Jennifer Lynch, which to this day on my channel is I think it's the longest interview she's ever done. And it kind of got me back into, it kind of brought it all back, right? When I was younger, like, oh yeah, Twin Peaks, I love it so much. Yeah. And so I wanted to kind of start talking about it. And then after about a year or so, it's like, I'm done with this. Like I've talked about it to death, right? There's only so much I can talk about season 1 and 2 about in the movie. And then what happened? They announced the Blu-ray set was coming with the missing pieces. So I'm like, okay, all right, I'll wait till that comes out. And then they announced season 3, right? And I'm like, okay. Now, I was watching a lot of like, do you remember back in the days when it was like AMC Movie Talk and that kind of stuff, right? And they were always talking about comic book movies and things like that. But I thought, it'd be really fun is what if we talked about Twin Peaks that way? What if we got people built up like, the play by play, like they're going to do, and so we started doing that, and that got us, people really liked it. I heard from people who worked on the set that they would watch the videos. But then we'd also sometimes get in hot water because like someone would tell us something and we wouldn't like spoil anything, but we would say something like, hey, we heard that they're interested in having James's bike back. Right. And for that flashback moment. Now we didn't know it was a flashback moment. We just heard, hey, supposedly they're gonna have James's bike back. And Sabrina like reached out and she goes, I think let's keep that kind of stuff private. And I thought, oh my God, I didn't think that was a big revelation that his bike was in it. But I used to make up funny stories like my co-host and I would make up funny stories like the fans are watching them shoot outside the Double R diner, and Lynch, remember there's pictures behind the scenes of Wild at Heart with Lynch with a Magnum walking around. And so I would just make up these stories that like, if the Twin Peaks fans got too close, Lynch would just fire a gun in the air, and scare them away, which is, obviously so ludicrous, but some people took it seriously and thought Lynch was running around like a madman. And then, of course, when you watch season 3, what happens? There's a Magnum shot at the Double R diner, right? And I was like, oh God. Anyway, so we ended up doing that for a while. And then obviously then when season 3 came out, and it was, you remember, it was a party. It was like five straight months of headaches and bliss at the same time. And then, so we were coming down from that when I got the idea to do Queen of Hearts. And then that, I honestly, I thought it would take about a year to do this movie. Right. Because I thought that because I had so many people watching the show, so many people on the show, I thought, well, this is going to be super easy. We're going to throw this together, get some local actors, wherever,
Right.
bang this thing out. It's gonna be a lot of fun, and next year we'll have something to show, and then again, because I'm in my own bubble, you guys are in your own bubble. Sometimes you just
Right.
don't really realize how much potential drama there is in fan communities, and it's maybe not so much anymore, but I think it was at that point because people were happy, elated, and also very upset by season 3. So there was a lot of push and pull there, and and people were wanting season 4 and all that. And I think the drama of it's just, like there's when people in Star Wars or Star Trek, those are huge fandoms.
Yeah.
But Twin Peaks is so, okay, I'm not saying it's a small fandom, because obviously there's a lot of people who follow everybody on Twitter and YouTube and podcasts and stuff. But the people who regularly post about Twin Peaks is a very small number.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably about 100 people, and we all know them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like there's this whole thing of like, I've always maintained, it's like we should not ever be fighting with each other because nobody's trying to take over anybody's space. Everybody occupies their own little thing.
Right.
Everybody's happy doing their own little thing. And so I've always pushed for collaboration more. And obviously, the film kind of pushed me into a direction where I wasn't making as many videos. And I just, I'm hoping that there really doesn't need to be, I feel like if we all truly love the show, I don't understand. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And I think there were people who saw, especially during the pre-production of this film, people who were outside of the fan community that saw opportunities to troll people or turn people against each other. And, I think if we were all knew each other beforehand, I'm not talking about you guys and me, but just all of us in general.
Right.
I think it would have been easier for us to all come together and be like, hey, what is going on with this? Oh, that's what's going on, whatever. But because we all kind of like are in our own little bubbles, and every once in a while we collaborate.
Yep.
It made for a lot of what's going on. Oh, I'm hearing this, and and then it just creates a whole bunch of nonsense. And I'm hoping that even if Twin Peaks doesn't come back anytime soon, I'm hoping that all of us as Twin Peaks creators, whether we're making films, videos, podcasts, whatever, I'm hoping that we can all kind of be some sort of like communication with each other, so that if there's another stupid drama riff or whatever, it gets squashed almost immediately. Because
Sounds good to me. Sounds really good. Let's come together. Cameron, it was great having you on the show. Do you want to plug the movie? You want to say where people can follow you?
So Queen of Hearts, Twin Peaks fan film, you can find it on the Annie Blackburn YouTube channel, and you can follow me on the YouTube channel, Obnoxious and Anonymous. The reason why it's called that is because years ago, there was a website called Ain't It Cool News and Yahoo and everything else. And the comment section were always really obnoxious people that posted anonymously. And I always said, if I ever created something like a channel or a website, I would call it that, and it would be the antithesis of that. So that, and I never planned on doing Twin Peaks videos, it just ended up being that way. And so that's why the channel is called that. It's not a troll channel, regardless of whatever you've heard. So.
I always wondered. That's really cool that you shared that with us. Yeah.
So if you have a comment, question, or theory, give us an email at twinpeaksunwrapped@gmail.com. You can like us on Twitter, Facebook. We're on all the podcast platforms at this point. We'll be back next month with a very special episode, and then we're going to end the year off with our best of Twin Peaks in 2022, which will have a lot of surprises in that. So we have 2 more shows for 2022, so we'll see you next month.